Yes, I know. You're thinking, is this going to be too deep, too real, or too much like my own reflection? Well, you don't need another soft-spoken fairy to guide you through healing. You need a witness, a mirror, a fire. This season, we're not choosing ourselves. We already did that, and we're standing on it. This is about flying with both eyes open, waking up and waking others, shattering systems with truth and showing people what's possible when you finally stop asking for permission to live free. So, if you're still here, good. Let's get into it. The moment it began, you didn't have proof. You didn't have applause. You had a whisper. And against every warning, every shout from the cheap seats, you followed it. You left a job you were supposed to be grateful for. You ended a relationship everyone thought was perfect. You stopped showing up in places you used to beg to be included in. You ghosted the version of you that kept apologizing just to survive. You chose discomfort over disguise. You chose the truth that shattered your image over the lie that maintained your role. You honored the ache that told you this wasn't right, even if it meant standing alone. And still, there was no immediate reward, just silence, suspicion, and a sick feeling in your stomach that maybe you just ruined your life. The fall. But you didn't run back. You didn't scramble for something familiar. You tilted your head back and trusted the fall. It wasn't courage. It was compulsion. A coded memory in your bones that said, this isn't the end. It's a transfer. While others were screaming, you were listening for the signal beneath the noise. You were decoding a frequency only your future self could recognize. You trusted the whisper over the yells. You followed the pull that no one else could see. And when they called you crazy, you kept walking. The collapse. Yes, it felt like hell. The accounts drained. The friendships ended. You stopped hearing from the ones you always poured into. You wondered if maybe they were right. But the collapse wasn't a failure. The collapse was clearance. A recalibration so raw, it made your body feel like it was breaking. You weren't lazy. You were upgrading. You weren't lost. You were being redirected. That wasn't burnout. That was bandwidth opening. You were making room for your gifts to return. The ones your bloodline buried out of fear. Clairvoyance, intuition, foresight, prophetic dreams. They were never gone. They were dormant. And now, they're live. Because the next timeline, it required capacity that you hadn't had before. It required discernment no one ever taught you to trust. The glitch. You stopped asking for permission. You stopped waiting for someone to clap. And without realizing it, you stopped fitting. The patterns couldn't hold you. The projections couldn't find you because your code changed. They saw rebellion, but it was revelation. They saw sabotage, but it was strategy. You didn't heal quietly. You glitched, loud, bold, beautifully unrecognizable. You outgrew the bait and the handler. You became untraceable to the old timeline and unshakable in the new. You're no longer a mirror for their projections. You became the firewall. And what was used to infect you now dies on contact. The trust fall. They thought you'd break. You thought you'd break. But the truth, you already had. And the version of you that rose from that fall, they're not looking for belonging. They're building their own algorithm. You didn't just trust the fall, you rewrote the laws of gravity mid-air. You read vibes like it's your native tongue, decoding intention by tone, posture, vibration. You know when to stay soft and when softness is the setup. You know when to give grace and when grace becomes gasoline. You know when to stay gentle and when gentleness is just a trap. You understand when to offer kindness and when kindness just fuels the fire. You're not confused anymore. You're calibrated. You trusted the whisper over the yell. You walked away with no guarantees. You tapped into something deeper. You woke up fluent in light and darkness. Now you move effortlessly between different worlds. No more confusion. You're in tune with yourself. And now, you're not just falling anymore. You're soaring. And this time, you remember the wings were yours all along. You didn't leap from clarity. You leapt from chaos. From a life that kept trying to erase you while asking you for your smile. You trusted the whisper not because you were healed, simply because the pain of staying finally outscreamed the fear of leaving. That wasn't a leap, that was a funeral. For every role you were forced to play just to keep people comfortable with your suffering. And when the collapse came, no one warned you it would feel like dying. No one told you the silence after the fall will be the loudest thing you ever survive. But you're here now. You're not just alive, you're awake, decoded, untethered, glitching in real time. While the old timeline scrambled to understand why it can't find you anymore. Well, because you're not just off the radar, you are the signal. And what comes next isn't about who receives you. It's about what you refuse to return to. Wait, hold on. Before you go, hold on. All right. You made it to this part of the episode. Thank you for staying, remaining, and watching. I want to give you an energetic cleanse with some Palo Santo. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Your likes, your shares, your follows, your reposts, all of that is much appreciated. I am Wolfie. This is the Empowered Shadows podcast. And I look forward to chatting with you another time. Take care.